All right, let's jump straight into this explainer. We so often picture Rome as this steady, continuous behemoth, just this unshakable empire existing in pure, pristine marble perfection. But the reality? Well, it's a lot messier. Over 4 centuries, Rome actually survived by constantly destroying and then rebuilding itself through some truly shocking, extreme violence. So today, we're going to dig into this wild, bloody cycle of raw ambition, staggering wealth, and relentless warfare that completely defined the Roman state. Take a look at this quote because it absolutely nails what we're talking about today. Back in the days of the early republic, there was a real system in place, right? You had the Senate, you had elections. It was supposed to be civilized. But the breakdown of that Roman democracy set a really vicious precedent because once powerful men figured out they could just use their loyal armies to completely bypass the ballot box, well, violence bred more violence. And that grim realization essentially became the defining rule of the empire for centuries. So, to make sense of all this massive history, here is our roadmap. 1. The Republic's bloody end. 2. Reaching the imperial zenith. 3. Reuniting a fractured empire. And 4. A new Christian Rome. We'll track exactly how Rome morphed from a failing republic into a totally new kind of autocracy. Starting off with Part 1, the Republic's bloody end, featuring Spartacus and Caesar. We are kicking things off in the 1st century BC. Just look at the rapid succession on this timeline. The incredible greed of the ruling class and this massive influx of slave labor pushed the Republic right to the brink. The existential dread caused by the Spartacus rebellion in 73 BC directly paved the way for generals like Julius Caesar to grab absolute power just a few decades later. Because when a society is terrified, that terror almost always demands a strong man. And I mean, Spartacus was genuinely terrifying for the Roman elite. Think about it. A gladiator leading 70,000 slaves in open revolt. They didn't just beat the Roman militias, they entirely humiliated them. They even captured the fasces, which was the ultimate symbol of Roman state power. It actually took a ruthless commander named Crassus, using decimation, literally forcing his own soldiers to beat to death every 10th man in retreating units just to restore discipline. He ultimately won, and crucifying 6,000 rebels sent a sickening message for sure. But the sheer panic Spartacus caused made Rome realize they desperately needed utterly ruthless military commanders just to survive. Enter Julius Caesar, who brilliantly capitalized on that exact need. His path to autocracy is an absolute masterclass in raw ambition. First, he aligns with mega-rich guys like Crassus and Pompey. Then he marches up to Gaul and launches what is essentially an unsanctioned genocide. He kills tens of thousands, builds immense personal wealth, and, crucially, forges a fiercely loyal army. When the Senate finally tries to stop him, he doesn't step down. No way. He crosses the Rubicon with his loyal veterans, slaughters his old ally Pompey in a civil war, and just bypasses the Republic entirely to name himself dictator for life. He proved that if your army loves you more than they love the state, you can literally take the whole world. Which brings us to Part 2, reaching the imperial zenith and Trajan's conquest. Caesar's assassination obviously didn't restore the Republic, it just birthed the emperors. So let's jump forward about 150 years to the absolute peak of Roman power. Check out this massive contrast in how 2 very different leaders handled the barbarian threat of Dacia, which is modern-day Romania. Emperor Domitian? He basically opted for cowardly bribery. He paid off the Dacian king Decebalus and, unbelievably, sent Roman engineers to help them build up their infrastructure. He was literally arming his own enemies. But then Trajan takes over, absolutely refuses to repeat that massive mistake, and instead launches a colossal military campaign of total conquest. And the payoff for Trajan's ruthlessness? 225 tons of gold. Just to put that into perspective, we are talking billions upon billions of dollars in today's money, not to mention the silver and the slaves. This unbelievable, sudden, tidal wave of wealth funded the single largest architectural explosion the city of Rome had ever seen. Trajan used this monumental propaganda to cement his legacy. He essentially built a 100-foot-tall billboard, Trajan's Column, displaying 155 distinct scenes of Roman military dominance over the Dacians, which you can actually still go see in Rome today. But there is a huge catch here. His endless ambition to conquer the world pushed Rome's borders all the way into modern-day Iraq. They bit off way more than they could chew, stretching the empire to a breaking point they simply couldn't defend. And that leads right into Part 3, reuniting a fractured empire during the crisis of the 3rd century. Because just as we get comfortable at that absolute peak, the overextended empire literally shatters. We drop into a terrifying 50-year nightmare where barbarian invasions, plague, and civil war tear Rome into three completely separate pieces. Talk about an impossible to-do list. The existential threat here is unimaginable. Rome was days away from starvation and total collapse. The East broke off, the West broke off, barbarians were physically inside Italy. Then enter Emperor Aurelian. He was this hardened soldier of low birth who steps up and systematically executes this completely impossible military checklist. Just look at the speed here, through unbelievable discipline and sheer tactical genius. Like using a brilliant feigned retreat at the Battle of Antioch, Aurelian physically stitched the fractured empire back together in just 4 years. He drove the Alemanni out in 271, captured the brilliant Queen Zenobia in 272, and crushed the Gallic usurper in 274. It is genuinely one of the greatest, fastest military comebacks in human history. But here's the true genius of it, and what you really need to take away from this segment. Aurelian realized that military force alone wasn't going to keep the empire together long term. He needed a single, unifying idea. So he elevated Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun, to bind his incredibly diverse and fractured military together under one singular god. He essentially weaponized monotheism as a brilliant tool of state control. Moving to part 4, a new Christian Rome and Constantine's absolute rule. Now, Aurelian was tragically assassinated by his own men, which proved his system was still super fragile. That passes the baton to our final era, where another ambitious soldier would finish this transformation and literally change Western civilization forever. Notice how Constantine basically takes Aurelian's playbook and levels it up. Previous emperors, like Diocletian, had tried to violently wipe out Christianity in the Great Persecution. But Constantine flips the script entirely. He adopts this heavily persecuted yet rapidly exploding Christian faith to unify the entire Roman Empire under a single god, and more importantly for him, a single ruler. You've probably heard of this moment. Right before the crucial Battle of Milvian Bridge, Constantine claimed to have a heavenly vision. He actually had his men paint this symbol, the Chi Rho, forming the first 2 letters of Christ's name in Greek directly onto their shields. Armed with this revolutionary new divine mandate, Constantine marched into battle and decisively crushed his rival Maxentius. Suddenly, the Christian god became a god of battlefield victory. Now, do not mistake this new Christian emperor for some kind of modern pacifist. Not at all. His climb to absolute power was as ruthlessly blood-soaked as Julius Caesar's. He paraded his rival's severed head through Rome. He executed his co-emperor Licinius despite promising him mercy. In a terrifying bout of paranoia, he even executed his own brilliant son on false charges, and then executed his own wife for framing him. He showed absolutely zero mercy to anyone who threatened his unified rule, family included. Despite all that bloodshed, his legacy completely reshaped the world. He issued the Edict of Milan, finally ending Christian persecution. He literally called bishops together to establish the Nicene Creed and unify religious doctrine. He built St. Peter's in Rome, created a spectacular new capital at Constantinople, and finally got baptized on his deathbed in 337 AD to wash away a lifetime of sins. By the time he died, he had successfully turned a fragmented pagan republic into a unified Christian autocracy. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on. Did ambition and endless war actually save the Roman Empire, or did it guarantee its destruction? Because from Caesar's brutal legions to Trajan's looted gold, from Aurelian's lightning-fast reconquest to Constantine's new god, Rome survived by constantly reinventing itself through extreme violence. But as they traded their republic for autocrats and their ancient gods for a new imperial faith, we have to ask, at what ultimate cost to its soul? Thanks for joining me on this journey, and I highly encourage you to keep questioning the history we think we know.